In 1996, the final EIS for the operations of Glen Canyon Dam was released. In that document, it stated that the primary factor that was affecting the non-native fish, the humpback chub, which is an endangered species and a special concern for the Fish and Wildlife Service, was the cold water releases from Glen Canyon Dam. And this is what the Fish and Wildlife Service believed was hindering the humpback chub population viability in the Grand Canyon. And so they operated under wanting to put in steady flows to warm the water, but because of hydropower production and delivery of water to the states, they went with the preferred alternative of modified low fluctuating flows. The dam operated under that, and is still operating under those operational criteria. In 2000, 2001, the monitoring of the humpback chub population, which is focused around the Little Colorado's confluence with the Colorado River in Grand Canyon, they determined that the humpback chub population was declining rapidly, and that it was so small that it might blink out of the canyon, and that caused a lot of harm or a lot of concern for everyone. So, with the Grand Canyon Monitoring Research Center biologists and the Fish and Wildlife Service, they determined that the problem is the trout, the rainbow trout, and the rainbow trout's predation and competition for resources for the humpback chub. And they designed an experiment. The experiment was to do mechanical removal of humpback chub at the confluence for 4 years on, followed by 4 years of not doing mechanical removal, followed by another 4 years of mechanical removal, and then followed by 4 years of no removal, to see how the humpback chub population actually responded to a reduction in trout numbers down at the confluence. They consulted with 5 tribes that are members of the Adaptive Management Program in Grand Canyon. The Bureau of Reclamation and the National Park Service came out to consult, and the tribes were concerned about the taking of life in the canyon, and especially at the confluence. And the confluence represents a place of life in the Colorado River. And the solution that was offered is that the trout remains that were taken out would be ground up into a fish emulsion and then provided to the Wallapai to use as fertilizer for their gardens. And so that was going to mitigate the tribal concerns. The other concern of the tribes was don't do it right at the confluence, stay away from the confluence. So between 2003 and 2006 or 7, they did the mechanical removal. And in total, they removed about 20,000 trout. And ground them up and looked at trout stomachs to see if there were indeed humpback chub in them. Of those trout stomachs that they looked at, there was a very small, they identified that yes, the trout are piscivorous, they are fish eaters, but they couldn't determine a very large percentage that were actually humpback chub. Here's the theory, is that the humpback chub spawn in the warmer waters of the Little Colorado River. And as the young of the year, as they enter into the Colorado River, there's a thermal effect which shocks the fish, the young humpback chubs, so they can't swim or move quickly, and the big bad trout come by immune. So they figured by reducing the trout numbers, that would do it. And in 2000, so they saw a decline in trout numbers because they took out 20,000 trout. At the same time, they saw an increase in humpback chub population numbers going up. Confounding this was the fact that we were in a drought, an extended drought, and the elevation of Lake Powell had dropped. So the dam was releasing warmer water by a few centigrade. And so that may have been having an effect as well. Of course, there may be other confounding factors about humpback chub, survivability that aren't being tracked. Anyways, in 2008, I was representing Zuni at the Adaptive Management Program. And one of the Zuni religious leaders for the Galaxy Fraternity came up to me and said, "Are they still killing trout in the canyon?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "That's wrong." He said, they need to stop doing that. And he explained why. And so I started bringing this issue up at the technical work group meetings of the stakeholders that advised the Secretary of the Interior on the operations of the dam. And while they acknowledged that Zuni had an issue with it, they continued to want to do the trout removal, and they had planned it. And so we were objecting to their planning to continue mechanical removal in 2009 and 2010. And my expressed concerns weren't getting traction, so in 2009, the governor of the Zuni tribe sent the Bureau of Reclamation a letter demanding consultation, saying that the mechanical removal is creating a counterproductive effort to the Zuni's ceremonial efforts to maintain harmony and balance with the physical world and the spiritual world, and to bring harmony and prosperity to all people. And he also claimed that I forgot to mention that the experiment, the 16-year experiment, after the first 4 or 5 years, was truncated because they thought they saw a positive effect from the trout removal. And so they decided to terminate the experiment and then implement the mechanical removal as a management action. And that's what the governor was saying you needed to come back and consult with us on. It's because you changed the undertaking. And so over 2.5 years, 3 years of consultation between the Pueblo of Zuni and the Bureau of Reclamation, Department of the Interior, even the Assistant Secretary for Water and Science. I can tell you that it was one of the most frustrating experiences of my life, because every time we had federal agency scientists and people come out to Zuni to talk, their main emphasis was to try to tell Zuni that, well, we understand your cultural concerns, but the science is telling us that we have to kill trout. And the Zunis kept saying, you kill trout, something bad is going to happen. Something bad is going to, that you are upsetting the spirits of the animals you are killing. You are killing these trout without a real purpose. You, the federal government, have created the problem. You stocked trout in this river in the 20s. You built a dam. You didn't consult Zuni about building the dam. Then your paradigm for natural resource management changes. It changes from wanting to put in sport fishery to wanting to emphasize natural biodiversity, and so now native fish are preferred, and you have the ESA, and your implementation is to take life, which is going to have an effect on Zuni. Interesting that just the other day I was talking with a tribal councilman who talked with the religious leaders, and he was stating that the religious leaders, during the time mechanical removal was implemented, they noticed that there was an increase in the use by the BIA police of tasers on Zunis. And so they felt that in the minute mechanical removal stopped, mechanical removal, let's say, included electrofishing, where they electrofish, send a charge in the water, the fish gets done, come up, and then collect the trout, and then grind them up. So the Zuni was saying, you're creating more of a problem. The Zuni also criticized and challenged the scientists, saying, what you're showing us is that, yes, the trout are pestiferous, but you have no good data to tell us that that's the reason why the humpback chub population isn't more viable. There's no one-to-one relationship that you can establish. It's an assumption that you're going by, and you're willing to kill based on that assumption. And it's weak science, and you're using this science to justify spending $110 per fish to kill these fish. And we object to it. So in 2010, the Zuni Tribal Council passed a resolution sent to the Bureau of Reclamation and said, the Grand Canyon is a traditional cultural property from rim to rim because of the associative values it has for Zuni. And let me explain also that what I meant to explain earlier on is that the Zunis have a direct relationship to the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, and the Little Colorado River. The Grand Canyon is the place of emergence. They emerged at Ribbon Falls. It is also the place the medicine bundles were created, and they began their migrations. So it's central to who Zuni is as a group. They also, there's a spiritual umbilical connection that is facilitated through the Zuni River, its confluence with the Little Colorado River, its confluence with the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. The Zunis in the morning and in the evening go to the Zuni River in the Pueblo Zuni and deposit offerings and prayers to the Grand Canyon. And they felt that the negative actions that were going on in the Grand Canyon were having a direct impact on things that were going on at Zuni. And the tasing is one example of how they interpreted the cause and effect. Whether the scientists believed the cause and effect or not is immaterial. The Zunis did. And so through this resolution, the Zunis said that the Grand Canyon is register eligible, and it's a Zuni TCP. The Colorado River is register eligible, it's a Zuni TCP, and it's a sentient being. And so is the Little Colorado River. And your actions are an adverse effect. And you need to mitigate that adverse effect by not taking the life in the Grand Canyon. So over numerous consultation, and that resolution was backed up by a statement by 34 Zuni religious leaders from different Kiva groups and medicine societies that signed it and appended it to the resolution, which is pretty powerful stuff for Zuni, saying that they felt the mechanical removal, the killing of fish, was wrong. And the reason it's wrong is because in the migration histories, the Zunis believe, they came out and emerged into this world from Ribbon Falls, and on their migrations, ancestor Zunis were crossing a river, and the Zunis' children were on their back. As they were crossing the river, the Zuni children fell off their backs and into the river and drowned, but were metamorphosed into fish and other aquatic beings. That incident created a familial relationship between contemporary Zuni and all aquatic beings. And so all fish, even if they're non-native in the Grand Canyon, are considered their children. And so in essence, they felt Bureau of Reclamation was funding the killing of Zuni children, and they wanted it stopped. And in 2011, the Zuni signed an MOA with the Bureau of Reclamation that said that if any trout were removed from the Grand Canyon, they would be done alive. But fortunately, the triggers to do mechanical removal, right now, trout numbers are increasing, humpback chub numbers are increasing. So that questions the hypothesis that the scientists put forth regarding whether or not the trout are having a negative effect on humpback chub viability, population viability, because if it was that much of a limiting factor, you would think that as trout numbers increase, you would see humpback chub numbers decrease. But that doesn't seem to be the case at this point in time. The other wrinkle to this is that last year, Arizona Game and Fish Department identified whirling disease in the trout population at Lee's Ferry, which means that live trout removal is probably not going to be effective, and it's not going to be able to be done. So if at some point they decide they're going to have to do trout removal, they're going to have to come back to Zuni and renegotiate how to mitigate the killing.